look at our final hair model. Well, not the final, but the final Alembic version of it. And we are going to do a card version after this. My name is Andrew Giovannini, and I've been a character artist in the games industry, primarily focused on doing hair for roughly 5 years now. My first big project here was Cyberpunk. I've also worked on a Star Citizen Squadron 42 a little bit, and also last 3 years I was with Gearbox/LBI. We are going to show you this model to begin with. So I'm going to get rid of this sequencer for now. We're going to go back to normal. You can see we have some cool physics applied. So this is our menu to look at the properties. I'm going to get rid of this because we already have it on screen. And I can turn off this wind so it relaxes. Let's see if we can play with it. Put on some upward wind. Goes crazy. And you can see it nicely wraps around the head too. So I'm going to show you how to do all that. It doesn't just clip right through. So it's a very powerful, good system. So I'm just going to reset that. Okay. Very nice looking hair physics. And I'll show you guys how to set all that up too. So I need to turn on the link. And you can see, we can check out the movement a little bit. This is a full game ready hair asset. And then I'm also going to be doing a full, more comprehensive video from setting up your curves in Maya, your first curve in Maya, to getting to this point. So if you're interested in that, please consider subscribing. If you see here, for this Alembic group, there's a tab, I should say, for hair cards. This is where our hair cards are going to go. And we're going to create all the LODs and everything for those hair cards. And the cool thing is that all of these properties, all these physics properties, all of the groom binding properties will work on the hair cards as well. So you'll be able to get much better performance and maintain physics as well. There's a Discord link in the description. I wanted to find a better place than Google Drive to host these script files like in my first video, and I'm going to have another one here today for you guys. You just need to join the Discord, which is in the link, and then under useful tool links, I list all the, basically I throw in notepad files, and I'll show you how to use it today. One we're going to use today is a spline group manager, which I created basically with just ChatGPT. But it bypasses a major issue with the export process in Maya, and that it's just incredibly slow, and this will speed it up quite a bit. So I started a Patreon, and if you wanted to support this educational aspect of this channel, right now I don't really have any benefits. It's just there if you want to support. You don't have to, obviously. These videos are going to be free for YouTube, but it's there for now. This is our full Xgen description. That's our fringe description. We have our body to just cover most of the body. And we have a fill too. So just without the fill. And the fringe. And this is to help get fill around the scalp. And then again, the body, the fringe. And that's the bulk base of our hair asset. And then we have all of our breakup clumps. So we have a fringe breakup up here that was inspired by our reference. And then we have all of these other breakup pieces. And so that's all our breakup layers on top. For this hair split, I have a shorter one and a longer piece to add just nice, more nuance and breakup. Right? I want to cover their fill layer real quick, since this is not something I live streamed before. how do I create this this fill layer that nicely matches up with our body, right? Like it blends nicely and it helps fill in, and it makes it so we don't have to go so crazy dense with all these long hairs, and we can have some nice breakup, right? With that set up with GS Curve tools, all you got to do is use this selection, right? Like that. And then you hold shift and then you bring the slider down the line. And you can see it selects all the points up to a certain point. Before you do that, I just noticed we need to rebuild. If we go press F8, let's just rebuild to 20. So if you use this, you can see you can select CVs along the curves, right? If you hold shift and you drag it, you select all the CVs as you drag along. So I recommend like somewhere like maybe 2/3, right? We're just gonna stop there. Press delete. So as you can see, we have our shorter guides now from our main guides. And so what that's gonna let you do, as we mentioned, you're gonna have a body and then you're gonna have a fill that matches everything else really well. Go over the lattice stuff one more time. Let's say you want to reduce the volume or change the shape here, right? You have a lot of guides and it can get messy if you're not careful. So I select all the guides for the area relevant to what I want to change, right? And then I go into component mode, which is F8. And if you're not seeing these dots, just right click and make sure you hit Control Vertex in this little window here. Select roughly the area where we want to change. I go a little bit past it, so let's say I want to change kind of this, push it in. Okay, so the form, lattice. So we're going to change our values here a little bit. Obviously, the higher these numbers, the more control you have over the shape, but the lower, the easier it is to maintain clean shapes, right? So let's say I want to push it in this direction from bottom left to upper right, this little bottom section here. So I'm going to select this bottom selection, like either a group of vertices or just one or two. Like I can select just this one, right? And then I'm going to press B to turn on soft select, and then hold B and left click drag until that selection kind of fades pretty close to the where the actual body is. First, we're going to hit D, and with D, we're going to rotate this pivot actually. And then we're going to point it towards the body, and then we're going to move it towards the body so that it's right there where it meets the body. If we go into scale mode, now we can pull that in like that. So that would be how you'd like change shapes. And you can, that's how I did on top. And oftentimes, like you'll have to make some fixes and corrections along the roots after you do this, but this will get you like 90% of the way there and help you maintain like pretty clean results. So that's the best way to change overall larger shapes on your hair if you need to like make adjustments to your silhouette. Yep, see, it got pushed in. Okay, let's go over some description setups. So this is our most dense layer basically now. And this helps get nice coverage all around. And the way I think about it as like the idea that a groom or one thing I want to mention for this noise layer, and I kind of took this principle with all of my descriptions for all the parts of the hair, is I only use this noise layer, at least for this particular hairstyle. I never apply it to the main body. I only apply it to the strays. So if you hit the stray, you get the stray percentage. And right now it's set to 5%. Yeah, some other ones I sent to like 20%, which I'll show you in a second. But the reason for that is I don't want to mess up our nice clumping stuff. Like this would be an example of one of our like clumped layers, right? This is our breakdown, something like this. So we start with our main clumps, which are set up to follow the guides. We're using a random modifier, and that helps just to give us some variation in how clumped it is. All right. And then we add a second clumping. I'm using a density of like 7.5 here. And basically, what I'm looking to do is take the primary clumps and divide those like by just a set amount of clumps. So like 4 or 5, right? And then, so you take one clump and divide that into like 4 or 5 more clumps, right? You can do 3 more clumps, 4 more clumps, 5 more clumps. It's going to vary. And you can see like the example here, like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's like 8 actually. So, but they're layered on top of one another. So when I say 3 or 4, it's like across, but then there's more underneath. And then you want to make sure you add noise. So you want to adjust this graph. I push it up so it's near the root. So the clumping starts near the root. And then I'm using a value of 2. And if I raise that value more to like 4, you can see it breaks up more. If I go 10, breaks up more. So that's how you control something like that. But I want them to stay fairly clumping, so I'm only doing a little bit. And again, we take those smaller clumps and we divide them up even more. So that's how we get this, right? Because our individual hairs are super thin. So we don't want to just have everything. We want most of our hairs to have some kind of clumping. And then our cut layer helps break up these ends, right? It's just a random modifier. And I went up to 10. And then finally, our final noise gives us that extra little breakup. If we go to our body, these little stray hairs that come out of it, right? That comes just from this noise. So again, 0 magnitude on the main body, but 3 on the strays. So these are set to 5% too. So if you increase it to like 20, but you still have all the clumping underneath. And just to show you what this looks like without the fill layer. So that's everything. And no fill layer. You can see right through to the scalp. That's why you need it. So, and that would look bad in Unreal too. That's the general idea. You want to play with one layer of clumps at a time, follow your references, and try to break it down in a way that matches your references or to whatever your artistic sensibilities tell you to do. And we're going to go over the process of exporting basically manually from Maya to Unreal. And we're going to show you how to set up all your attributes too. So I'll offer you a tool, which is going to be in our Discord. And the reason I ended up putting this together is because some of this process can be really slow with Maya's UI, and just having like a little simple tool will speed it up pretty tremendously. And I'm just going to give it to you for free. You just have to join the Discord and you just download a little notepad document and you just copy paste that into the Python tab. So with fill, we select our fill description here in the outliner, generate, convert to interactive group, convert. Cool. So that one's done. And you could actually just select all of them and do it all at once, but Maya acts weird sometimes and you get weird strays and pop outs and stuff. Let's do our fringe. I'm just going to go in order from top to bottom and skip the fill since we already have that. So fringe, convert to interactive group. Convert. So that's fast. Okay, break up forehead. And we can just pop this out. Convert to interactive group, convert. Right sideburn. You can also press the G key, G as in George, and you'll just repeat the action you did. So G key, convert. Right. G key, convert. G key, convert. G key convert. And you can see there's like some stepping we can need to fix. Convert. All right. If you're already in Xgen, you want to get the interactive groom tab. They're all going to be under generate. So Xgen groom editors for the normal one. Interactive groom editor will pop out this window. So, and you usually want your attribute editor open too for this stuff. For instance, I'm seeing the stepping up here. So let's work on that first. So I'm going to rebuild just one time. Okay, and that seems to have fixed it. So we're good there. And apply our original hair shader to it. I'm also seeing some stepping here. So it might be worth going through and probably with our attribute window open, just come over here and hit rebuild on everything once. It can't hurt. So that'll just help clean things up a bit, right? So I have this little stray hair here, right? And I don't know if that's just a result of the conversion or just something from the original groom that we missed. First, we need to find that. So it might be this left sideburn, which, yes. So you can check it by turning all your layers off and on. And so we're going to go here, add modifier, sculpt. So we hit edit there after opening that up. Go to our Xgen tab. We have like a cut tool here, right? Well, first we need to go to our freeze tool. And so just making sure you're not freezing any other hairs in this layer. Just freeze this one hair. It'll turn blue. Now we want to get our cut. And I'm going to say invert frozen. If you right click, you get this marquee menu. If you hold right click, I'm just going to go invert frozen. It's also going to be, if you double click here in this tool menu, you'll have invert frozen here too, and other parameters to play with. So hold B, left click drag to make it bigger. And I'm just going to cut it like towards wherever it is. And now it's gone. And you can do other things too, like if you want to go to your add modifier, sculpt, edit that. I wouldn't go too crazy on this because you don't want it to stray and deviate too far from your original guides, right? So you can like adjust things, right? So, and you have a layer slider too. And you can even turn it off if you don't happy with your changes. I'm also going to show you how to set up and extract your guides. So you're going to want to go basically to all your descriptions and turn on your guides, which we have to turn this back on first. Okay, this is all here, right? And just double check to make sure you have everything because you want all your guides. And actually, I'm cutting out the fill guides because they're a little redundant. We don't want those. The fill is going to follow the rest of the guides that we already have. So now you have this under utilities. For any of the descriptions, you just have to come to utilities. With all your guides highlighted, you need to hit this button. All right. So now you have a new group here called XG Groom. So if you aren't using the core Xgen, or you're just starting from interactive Xgen and want to convert interactive Xgen to Unreal, and you still want to provide your own guides, you basically just have to stick your guides into a group called XG Groom. The rest of the children, however it's grouped after that, it doesn't really matter. It's just looking for the parent XG Groom, and the script will apply the attribute to all the basically all the splines, all the CV curves that are under that group. So hopefully that helps you out. So you can do this from core legacy Xgen or interactive Xgen. So we have our guides out and we have our Groom setup ready to be pushed out, right? So actually, you don't need to have this turned on. I'm just going to turn this off. Just wanted to show you. I'm also going to hide these guides for now. We're going to select everything. You can select them here in the Xgen editor, interactive editor, or you can do it from the outline. It copies it both ways. We have everything selected. Go to generate, cache, export cache. Let's select this little box next to export cache. And that brings up the setup menu for it. You can reset your settings if you want first. We're going to set this to current frame. I'm going to set this to right final width. It's going to do two things. It's going to just, because of the way Olympic grooms work, like they expect animation, we only want to feed Unreal like our starting point, right? Right final width is basically going to tell Unreal the width of your hair strands, which we set up in Xgen. We'll just hit export on that. And I have a folder here called export test. I'm going to make a new one called export demo. And we're going to do export demo. So save. Okay, so that's a pretty quick process. That's not too bad. Because I want to make this scene as light as possible before we start this process. I want to get rid of all this. I want to get rid of the original Groom. I want to get rid of our guides. And the reason we made all those saves is in case we need to go back and we forgot something, right? Current guide group, we can get rid of that. We don't need our lights anymore. We don't need both. So we want our hair cap because we're going to bake the UVs from it. So we have our growth cap. We don't need this either. So we have our guide grooms, which we need, our curve guides, curve guides, and we have our growth cap for the UVs. Now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to export demo, open. All right, well, that's loading. I can show you this. This is the Xgen Guidelines. This document is really outdated now, so if you're new to this, it can be kind of confusing and not super helpful, but it shows you some of the stuff I already showed you about converting to interactive, how to set this to current frame and right final width and all that. Basically, what I'm going to be showing you next is how to apply your create ID, your Group ID attributes, basically, your guide attributes, which marks some of the those curves we set up from Xgen as guides. And then we have one final script here, which is going to bake our root UVs to the same curves. But we're not going to use it as they intended because the way they set it up as they intended is just very strange. But I'm going to show you how to use this and how to modify it so that it works with Python 3. So that's that. To find us, just Google Xgen UE5, Xgen Unreal Engine 5. It'll be one of the top. It'll be called Xgen Guidelines for Hair Creation. You can see we're loaded in. Maya's laggy as hell while doing this. Let me first hide everything. So I'm just hitting Control H. All right. So that should be a lot better now, I think. So, yep. Now we can select stuff. Here's the issue. So let's open up this left side because that's a pretty small one. You can see I clicked the little tree to open it up, and it's already taking like several seconds. And if I did this with the body or the fill, it would take 30 minutes, maybe even longer. So I'm not going to do that here in the live stream, but I'm just going to demonstrate how you would set this up. So normally what you would do in order to get everything into one group ID for Unreal Engine 5, and if you want separate group IDs, so like to say you have a ponytail and you want that in its own, you're going to group it this way into its own group. But, so you're going to take, highlight, and then I'm going to highlight this one. So let's pretend this is all of them. So the last one you select is the one you want everything else to be parented to. So hit P. So now everything is in here. These are empty. So I'm just going to delete history on that just in case. Delete those. I'm going to come here. I'm going to go to our channel box layer editor screen and just rename that to Spline Group 0. Come up here. I would need demo description. So this would be the name of the main description, and spline group is the name of your splines. Okay. And if you can name it like however you want basically, but you need to organize it this way in separate groups. Depending on how many groups you want. But let's say this is how you would do it manually. And then you would run it through the script like I'm going to show you. But I'm going to show you also a better method, because if you try to open up these, you're going to spend 30 minutes, maybe hours just going through this process. Again, on the Discord, if you join it in the link in the description, there's a tool here I put called Spline Groom Manager. It's just a text file, just straight up, just raw text. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So this is it, basically. It's just a text file. And we edit, copy. We come here. I'm just going to blank everything and copy paste it here. And play it. You get this nice little UI, right? So I'm just going to select everything here. And I'm going to hit refresh. So this is showing me all the children in these groups. So basically all the spline groups that Xgen spat out for us. I'm just going to select this first one. Or we can select the one we already kind of set up. So it's already set as spline group 0, but I'm just going to demonstrate it. Spline group 0 for the group name, and then description name would be like the top group. We're going to call this export demo. So it was export demo description before, but I'm going to show you how this renaming works. So rename, and you can already see it worked, right? It's reflected here, export demo 1, spline group 0. And all these instructions for how to use this, I tried to be as good as descriptive as possible. It's right here, right? So with that done, I'm going to select this again, the same one I just renamed. And I'm going to hit the second button, reparent all splines to selected spline group. So since we have all of our groups selected already, with all our splines already in it, we're just going to hit this button. It's still going to take maybe some seconds or even a minute, but compared to how long it would take you normally, which would be at minimum maybe half an hour to an hour, this is much better. And we're ready to go. So I'm just going to exit this. We don't need it anymore. And again, that is for free, available on the Discord. So if that's of any interest or usefulness to you, definitely consider joining that. It doesn't cost you anything. So just to prove our point, I'm going to hit Shift H to unhide it. And yeah, I think that shows it well enough. So we're just going to hit Control H, because it's just heavy on Maya. Okay. So now we're just going to be purely working with this script editor until we're ready to export. Now we're going to be running through all of these scripts here, basically. So I'm just going to do it from the website. I have them also saved on the Discord as notepad files, and I even have this one already corrected to work with Python 3, which you need to do for Maya 2022 and up. So if you try to run this as is right now in Maya 2024, it's just going to give you an error. So the one on my Discord is fixed, but I'm going to show you how to fix it right now too if you only want to use this website. So we're going to start, actually I like to start with just, this is the one to set up your guides. So just looking through this code first real quick. So this is the name of the attribute. We're applying this attribute to these curves. The attribute is named Groom Guide. Unreal looks for this attribute, and basically it doesn't use those as strands. It uses those as the guides for your simulation. So you want to apply this in most cases. It's going to give you a much cleaner sim than generating them randomly, like basically every other tutorial tells you to do. And this is the name of the group it looks for, XG group. And so basically, as long as you have a group and you stick all your curves you want to be guides under XG group, it'll make those the guides. So you don't need to be starting from core Xgen. You can start from interactive Xgen. You just need to convert whatever guides or curves, whatever, to curves. And then you put them into a group called XG group. Or you can just rename this in the script and it should still work. And then you're good to go. It should be fine. So we're going to copy that, paste this into our Python tab like that. We have XG group right here, right? And then we're just going to hit the play button. We'll know it worked if all of those guides under XG group get placed into one guide group called just guides. See, right there. So now the next part, right? We need to apply spline, root UVs and the group IDs to our group. So we'll start with the group IDs. This one's pretty straightforward. Copy. All right, copy. So we're gonna erase all of these. Basically, they're showing you how to set up multiple groups. So if you organize your groups the way I showed you, and like you want to have more than one, you just do it the same way, but you just separate it, obviously, and you go through them one at a time. And then you would enter the 3 separate groups here as it is. So before this line would be the name of the top group. So for us, it's export demo 1 according to the outliner. And then we already have spline group 0 set as our spline group. And then you would keep doing that for each of these. But we're just going to erase those because we're only doing one. There's definitely a lot of useful things you can do with separated groups. So with separated groups, you can apply different materials to separate groups. You can apply different simulation properties to different groups. So for instance, you can have simulation turned off for a group, never turned on for another group. So this is this type of stuff you want to do. You don't want to just export a raw cache file. Hit play. And theoretically, it should work. Yeah. So if we didn't get any errors, that means it basically worked. So we're good there. We go all the way to the bottom. And they have another script here. So I want to run through this script first real quick. So this is it's going to create this groom root UV attribute. That's the name of it. So this is what Unreal's looking for. And it's going to apply the UVs from the UV set named map1. So you need to make sure. So let's say we're going to bake the UVs from our hair cap. So like you have your UV set up. You need to, this UVs that you want it to use needs to be, or you can rename it in the script too, but this is what it's looking for by default, map1. So if the UV set you want to use is not named map1, you can just rename it. So just name it map1, because that's usually Maya's default. But if you're working off some imported mesh and then you duplicated a hair cap off that mesh, you might not have that proper naming set up. So hopefully that saved you some headache if you were to struggle with that in the future. So I'm just going to copy this for now. Okay. And then we're going to come here. So we have this big script. You can change the name of the UV set name if you want here. You'll have to name it, change it here too. So just name it to map 1. It would be easier, honestly. So the other weird thing this script does is it wants to export the groom for you, but it only exports it with the root UV attribute, but we want our group IDs and our guides in the one same thing. So we don't want the function. We don't care about the function. So this export directory, just ignore it. This hair file equals whatever. It's basically asking what you want to name it. Ignore it. The only ones we care about are this, which is we want to enter our description name again, which is export demo 1, same as up here in the outliner. And our spline group 0 is the same as right here. Okay. So our UV mesh. So this is whatever we're baking the UVs from. So in this case, it's growth cap original. So just going to pop that in there. So now, in theory, the script should be ready to go, but we're going to hit a roadblock. So right there. So we're going to get the syntax error. And this is simply because it's a slight formatting difference from Python 2 to Python 3. And we just need to fix that. So it's just looking for these parentheses here. So we're just going to put parentheses around found curves and parentheses around curve shapes. And that fixes the script. And that's already fixed in the version on my Discord. Okay, go here, hit play. Okay, that worked really fast. Good. It's going to give you an error because we didn't create a path called dev reference, whatever. That's because I don't want it to export anyways, and I don't care. We just wanted the attributes, which it does in the earlier step. So we're good. This is all we needed. So now we're ready to export. So after you apply your attributes, I would personally recommend to save a brand new scene. Don't save over the one you're working on, because once you apply your attributes, you cannot reapply new attributes. You would basically have to re-import your guides again, your groom cache, and start over. We're going to export this, basically. We're going to export this. We're going to export the guides. And for this time, we're going to, under modeling, we're going to come up here to cache instead. Before we went to generate, we're going to use cache this time. We're going to go to Alembic cache. Export selection to Alembic. We're going to hit this little box next to it. I'm going to reset settings just so I can show you from scratch. Current frame, again, just like before. And we need to make sure we add our attributes. So if we go back, Xgen, you're going to want to add the scripts. So we'll need groom root UV. So copy that. So I add that here, add. We're going to need groom group ID. Copy that here, add. We're going to go to our groom guide attribute 2. Copy that. Paste, add. So now if your curves have these attributes, it'll export the curves with these attributes attached to them, which is what we need for Unreal. So let's give this a shot. Export selection. And let's go to export demo. The same thing, but I'm going to add UE5 to it. UE5. So we know it's the UE5 version. Okay, we're back in Unreal. This works with, obviously, any skeleton mesh. It doesn't, skeletal mesh. It doesn't just need work with MetaHuman, just to clarify that in case you were wondering. You're going to need these plugins turned on. I think, like I said, if you're working with MetaHuman, these will be turned on by default. Right, so you need support compute skin cache. It's going to be edit, project settings, rendering, optimization, yada yada, and then those two. This is under hair rendering, documentation. Okay, let's try this again. Import UE5 open. Cool. So we have our valid status file, attributes are valid, and we have our root UVs, which is super important for our conversion. The way, because we're working in y-axis in Maya, we have to do some conversion so that it comes in correctly. You have to mirror it in this first axis, and then, which I believe is X, and then I do a -90 on rotation on X and a 180 on the Z. I believe that's Z. So -90, 180, -1, 1, 1. For this, you want to use your imported guides, obviously. If you don't do guides or you don't want to do guides, you can just generate guides. And then if you have a really dense hairstyle, I would change this to like 0.01, you know. You don't want a ton of guides for a sim because it just makes it more expensive and you don't need it. So, but just imported for us today. You can see group 0. So if you have more than one group, like you set up more than group like how I showed you, it'll have multiple. You can set different attributes. So you can have guides for one, you can have generated guides for the other group. It'll treat them as separate groups, but they'll all be under one. All right. So if we import and we open this up, open up our viewport, let's see, we have the hairstyle, right? So I'm going to show you how you would add it from scratch. The MetaHumans already come with the hair component, but if your character doesn't have that, just start from the head, go to add here, and just look up Groom, like that, and you'll get all this stuff. So our Groom, you can rename it too. You can hit rename, demo, Groom. Right. And then we're going to look for our demo asset. And so you might be wondering now, well, that's not good. It's not lined up right? Because we actually modeled this on a different head. It's another MetaHuman head, but it has the same topology. So as long as whatever mesh you're working with has the same topology as the mesh you modeled your hair on, you can do what's called, you can refit it with a groom binding. So you right click, you can get a bunch of options. At the top here, we want to do what's create binding. And so, Zeba was the head we were working on in Maya. So that's going to be our source skeletal mesh down here. For this 0, that's the section you're matching with. So let me show you. So if you're doing this matching thing with the groom bindings, you're you need to look at what section you're matching. So here under LOD0, you have sections, and you can isolate. So this is section 0. So if we isolate and highlight it, we can see that's the head. Section 1 would be the teeth. Section 2 would be who knows what. Section 3, that eyeball, this eyeball. So obviously we're not trying to match the eyeballs. We're trying to match the head. So it's section 0 in this case. Import. create binding. Scan, store head. So that's our target. Zeva is our source. Good there. So you need your root UVs that so if you followed some of the other guides on YouTube, this just wouldn't work because this would be false. So this is monumental here. Monumental stuff we're doing. Create. And you're going to pop up here. And you can make changes and stuff if you want to. And you can even, like, if you can duplicate this group binding and choose a different target here, and you can apply the groom to other heads too. But I'm going to rename this to just to export demo binding. Come back here, come back to our demo groom. We're going to look for this that we just made, and boom. Now we fit. There we go. So I was going to show you how to do like a basic material, like from scratch, but for this live stream preview, and also I think this is probably what you should do, is just to take the material from the metahumans and use it for your characters. Unless you're doing something very specific, but this can do, like, I feel like 90 plus 95% of everything you would want to do for just general hair. So you have desaturation up top, so you can desaturate it, make it look a little more real, or you can desaturate it or keep it at 0 and it'll look more saturated. The color is based on this melanin parameter. So melanin is the material in your hair in real life that makes your hair darker. So if you have less melanin, your hair is usually lighter. If you have more of it, it's darker. So if we put 0, it's white, no melanin. 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, oops, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9 until 1. And it has some redness to it that's controlled by this hair redness as a separate slider. So 1 will just give you black hair. You usually want a little bit of red in there, a little bit of a hint of it at least. Melon variation. So if you raise that, it'll create more per strand color variation. Melon roughness variation. So you get more variation in the roughness per strand. And you can mess with your specular too. There's basically 2 specular lobes that you can mess with. And they have it set up as edge and front, and then you can adjust the overall strength of those 2 here. Right. These are just kind of how I had mine set up. You can also use hair dye. So generally for hair dye, you want less melanin to start with. So you think about the process of bleaching your hair. So you start with, like, maybe you want a little bit just to helps with the variation. Unless you just want it super bright one color, but turn on your hair dye and then you can start coloring it. Whatever you want. And I'm not going to do it today, but I'm also going to show you what you can do with the root UVs in terms of being able to use that to color different parts of the hair, different color too. But that is possible. And I'm sure you can maybe look that up. I think there's Unreal documentation for it. Turn that off. Let's raise our melanin again. So this is kind of cool. You can add some salt and pepper type of a feel. So it works pretty well. It's not perfect, I don't think, but it's not bad either. So if you want to add some white hairs. But here's the problem, is like the distribution is too even. I feel like you want like patches of it, right? So we can use the root UV stuff to do something like that too. I don't know. Maybe this will help. Actually, I can't tell if it is. So I guess you can add melanin variation range to the white hairs. You can even go all the way to 1. Let me do this at 1. Interesting. Maybe a lower number, yeah. So you can do something interesting with that, right? Yeah, so I think that covers the shader stuff. Okay, so one more thing to go over. I just want to go over some of the basic stuff for like the hair physics. Yeah, let's turn on our physics, right? So now you can see the hair is just flat, just drapes down. To fix this, so you might want it to do this because then it'll kind of sway back and forth as you move the head. Let me see. You can see it'll kind of drape more, which is kind of cool. So it's gonna depend what you're looking for, but for our purposes, so these first 3 parameters here are probably the most important. I'm just gonna turn on this preload. If we set to 0.5, it kind of goes halfway. 0.25, like a little less. 0.8 more. 1 is going to give you 100% your original shape. Substeps. So I think 5's a little low for this longer type of hair. So I actually like crank it to like 40. And then iteration count, I just double that to 10. Just doing lots of testing, that's kind of the minimum I would start with for a longer hairstyle like this. And then adjust as you need to. You have your gravity settings here. So you can leave this at default by now, but if you want it to be a little more floaty, you can lower that quite a bit. You can play with these air velocities to see your hair working in real time. You can adjust this to make it stronger. So we're getting that, right? So we're having an issue right now where it's clipping if we do that. So let's turn that off. So the way I would start by fixing this is to come to collision radius. It's set to 0.1 right now. I actually set this to like 3.5, something like that. We'll try that. And then we'll come and test this again, 1000. So that's definitely working a little better, but we're still having an issue. But it's better. You see, what am I doing? There we go. Try this one. So you see, it's working better with this one. It's wrapping up. You might be able to help it by adding. I think by increasing the strand size, you can help it too. But that's the gist of it. Like that's the gist of everything you need to know. There's also like one more thing I guess I can cover is this bend constraint. So stretch, I would just leave this at default because the stretch stiffness set to 1 basically means the hair's not really going to stretch. And generally speaking, unless you're like really pulling it apart, it's not going to stretch. So I wouldn't worry about that. The collision stuff, again, just the collision radius would be what I would mess with to begin with. So this bend constraint. This bend constraint might be one worth messing with, so if you think about it. Like we're already getting pretty nice results, I think, honestly. Right. But in the bend constraint, you have this curve here, and basically this represents the root, this end represents the tip. And so if you highlight this, it says strand coordinate and bend scale. So if you think of it this root to tip, if you lower this number, it'll reduce the stiffness towards the tip. So I like to make that like 0.1 basically. 1, 0.1. This is going to give us a little more fall off to that. So that looks really nice, I think. Right? And then if you want, you can try lowering this bend dampening, but I think this is good. You can break your groom and make it explode if you try to lower this too much. So this helps keep it kind of stable. But if you want it to flow even more, you can try messing with that too. So yeah, next, again, cards. We're going to be placing cards here. We'll go more over into how you can rebuild it to optimize in the future. In the video, I will also go over LODs. I think that covers everything you would need to know to do this. To set it up, you have the archives where I slowly go through all the curves, and then this live stream, we covered everything else to the export, to the setup. Please, if this is helpful to you and you want me to keep doing this, please consider subscribing. Please check the description, consider donating through the Patreon. Also, join the Discord if you want access to some of the tools I showed. And you can also share your art and progress and all that stuff there too, and ask me questions. All right, I think I'm going to end it here. Thank you. I hope this was super helpful to you guys. All right.